Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Heretic Hammer Podcast. I'm your host, Marshall, and this is my co-host, Dylan.
Hello, hello.
And it's an exciting day.
Woo!
Technically, at least upon the release of this episode, yesterday was the launch of the great Dawn of War Enhanced Edition.
Ooh.
That's right. I am... Consider my jorts creamed right now.
I wasn't ready for jorts.
I am so ready, dude. Like, I
know it's hot out, but like I wasn't ready for jorts.
You know, I haven't had jorts in a long time, actually. Which
You say that like it's a food.
well, I haven't worn them in a while. Which I would note. I don't feel like there's truly anything wrong with jorts, but besides the point.
Oh, I love them. I had multiple pairs.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So, I mean, so we've got the original Dawn of War game released with all of its expansions in one package, and most importantly, optimized for modern PCs. Because if you tried playing the original Dawn of War right now, it's not optimized.
It's not great.
No.
I have personally tried it. It's not great.
Soulstorm and Dark Crusade are okay. You do need to get mods or like put in the thing of code for just like to get the camera to zoom out more so that at least it's like a little bit more usable. But and unfortunately for some people, for me, it really isn't unfortunate. But the one that has the most mod support is Soulstorm, especially with the unification mod. Now, granted, I would say with the unification mod, I think for most people that kind of does anything that they were really missing, or a lot of the things. But for some reason, people like Dark Crusade over Soulstorm, and some people just straight up hate Soulstorm, and I don't know why. I've never known why. But you know what? They're all there now. They're all there, and they're all, hopefully, at the time of this recording, it hasn't launched yet, optimized. I'm gonna say this, and then like, yeah, it released the day before, and it's like the game is like it's like SpongeBob,
it's just broken.
Yeah, SpongeBob broken. Running around with the like in the fire, like it's broken. So as long as it hopefully is working, there's a lot to celebrate. So to celebrate, we're going to talk about the ever mysterious favorite boys of the Space Marines, the kleptomaniacs of the Blood Ravens.
Yes. This has been a long time coming, I feel like.
Yes. I feel like this was like the perfect time because, it was like, I think I was going to maybe want to go through more like normal legions, but like the game's going to release. It's a big time. We can really be like, yeah. So because of that, though, I also want to split this episode kind of into two parts. This whole episode will be one video, but there's gonna kind of be two halves, maybe like 3/4 and a extra quarter. But a portion of the game will not include any or a portion of this episode will not include any spoilers for the games for those who haven't played them and have distinct interest but want to know a bit more about their origins and maybe like, why are they memed this way? I'll give you the spoiler-free versions of those. And then we'll go over some of the goofiness that exists because, especially in the scenario of the fact of their actual storyline as a chapter in the 41st millennium, as they are unfortunately the products in some cases of being game first, lore second, especially at the time of their release. So, so we'll go over kind of the main things that really have affected the chapter. So we're going to go over both games that came out, the only two that ever actually released. It was a shame that the third one never came out. It felt like it had a lot of promise, but here we are, Anywho,
Mm-hmm.
let's get into the gritty of it, shall we? Like a mascot bust through my door.
Do you need me to do the
No, I was gonna
gritty,
say
or
like a mascot bust through the door. Just throw something at me. Anyway. So early M37, so I believe with how this gets marked, it would be like the year 36,000, blah blah blah. Though other imperial records contain some small references to the chapter having existence before this point, we kind of come to know the existence of the Blood Ravens at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And though they have no knowledge of their Primarch or their gene seed, there are at least some references and theory, is obviously just, again, fan theory, tying them to Magnus, which is an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
This is entirely conjecture, so there's nothing to gauge on this, but there's a few interesting aspects. So in the book A Thousand Suns, Horus Heresy book, there's some Marine or Psyker, he is having a vision, and his quote is saying, "O throne, no, the blood, the ravens, I see them too, the lost sons and a raven of blood. They cry out for salvation and knowledge, but it is denied." Kind of on the nose. A raven of blood.
Yeah. So ravens and blood and ravens. Yeah. Absolutely.
It is to note, though, that it is believed that due to the curse of Ahriman having brought so many of them into dusty boys, that all who bear Magnus's blood and aren't psychers are meant to turn to dust, because there is, I guess, like a book where this I guess happened, apparently. Like they found almost like other Thousand Sons in stasis, and then they just, like, when they brought them out, they just immediately turned to dust. So
Okay.
But there are other theories that maybe isn't necessarily the case, because, like, there are those who believe that in not actually having the Emperor's gene seed, but that the Grey Knights have Magnus's gene seed. That's why they're psychic, because there's thought that Magnus was going to receive them as his new legion, and they were going to, like, just kind of like hit the oopsie button on the Thousand Sons near the end of the heresy. So that's like a complicated issue, but it's reason to think that maybe isn't the case. Another, we'll say, messy issue about this is there is reference in the Blood Ravens book, or omnibus, that is written by C.S. Godot. But he's unfortunately kind of known to be an author who maybe did kind of really care a whole lot about the lore, or honestly even being like a consistent author. Like, he's like known for having things where it's like a gun on the like a tank would have a las cannon on it, but then a ballistic missile the next, or like the, you know what I mean, like, or just like,
so just inconsistencies from sentence to sentence,
or
like,
page to page, or
yeah,
so like it was just one of the, for example, a classic example is the idea that, like, there was a book of his where Eldar sprung from their transport to go into and hijack a rhino because they would have more armor, which is not an Eldar thing to do in the slightest. Their vehicles are so insanely fast. There's no reason to go into this essentially like World War I speed tank just because it's slightly thicker plated. Eldar don't care about that.
No, they care about mobility.
Yeah, and like using their own stuff. So just, and it's very old, when you're in that kind of kind of earlier 2000s, especially like the pre, like, especially, anytime it's pre 2010s, a lot of that lore stuff gets in a mix. And there's some hot takes about that stuff in conjunction with modern lore that I'd love to talk about someday, but it's not today. But he's not necessarily looked at as a light in that realm. So,
Okay.
So but there is a point in the book where essentially he very, very kind of in your face references this concept that Ahriman knows the source of the chapter and has known its leaders and everything. And, now is like, yes, like I remember we used to wear red ones too. And then there was something just like, yes, I hung out with your leader, like the one of the chapter founder. And it's like, huh? So
yeah, we went to the same high school.
Yeah, kind of. So I mean, that's where it's kind of like, but also realistically, I mean, like Ahriman's a liar, so he's like a mega Zinch guy, right? Like, I mean, never trust anything from a Zinch sorcerer, But it kind of is there, and it is still, as far as I know, it's technically canon book still, so it is what it is. But that really placates into the mystery of the true origins, right, of the Blood Ravens. Much like many chapters, we just truly do not know their source.
There's a lack of information, and there's also just enough misinformation to make it hard to like say anything concrete.
Correct. So in the known knowledge we do have, one of the first big figures for the chapter is Azariah Vidya. I believe that is how it is pronounced, because I believe
Azariah Nvidia, you say.
Yeah. I believe, but I will note, and this maybe could have just been a misspelling with where I was looking, or I misspelled it. But it is like, because it's Azariash. So I don't know if it is Azariash. But okay. Azariah kind of has some sense to it, because there is there is a chapter master later during the games that is named Azariah as well. Different last name, but also named Azariah. And it's not spelt with the S. Everything else is the same. So either I made a mistake, the post made a mistake, that I was like essentially looking at to get his name. So something's wrong, or it's right, but it's pronounced the same, or we're pronouncing it wrong. Who knows? Anyway,
I blame Seiscato.
Heroes.
I'm just gonna blame that guy.
Okay. He rose to prominence in a conflict in the Gothic sector against a number of Chaos Space Marines, where after losing all of the upper staff, literally the chapter master and all of the leaders of every companies. I was like, the word was escaping me. Like, each company commander was also dead. Or captain, but so he was like the only one left. And so he was like, all right. And he was chief librarian. I believe he was chief librarian. He was a librarian. And thus took it upon himself to not only take charge and take the lead that was essentially now bestowed upon him by default, but he kind of used his knack for kind of studying not only just heretics, but even just like movements, tactics, and began to be able to kind of see how their battle strategy was forming, and took time to study their movements, and end up turning the tide because he would use the enemy's tactics against them. So in a time when essentially the chapter could have completely been waylaid, you know, he had saved them from an utter defeat, and thus became the chapter's first dual chapter master and chief librarian.
Cool.
Yeah. So,
Dual chapter.
which is a thing that will happen, that technically haven't. It's a thing that happens multiple times in the history of the Blood Ravens. I couldn't speak. But yes, it's and that's a big thing then coming into that is as almost, I don't know if it's maybe as a result of that too, but then librarians and psychers become very prevalent in the Blood Ravens. They take, in general, like as a culture, they take a lot of info, or they take information. They love to research. They find lore, relics, and even study the arcane or psychic phenomena and try to master it and know of it and collect it. That's kind of why it like that quote with they cry out for salvation and knowledge, but it is denied. They seek knowledge. That is one of their main goals, is to seek and look for knowledge. Their battle cry is knowledge is power, guard it well. So they're a studious chapter.
Yeah.
Their homeworld,
which is cool.
Yeah. Their homeworld was originally on the planet of Aurelia. It was a hive world that served as the subsector Aurelia's capital. You know, it was an advanced and prosperous hive world with, you know, its cities. However, in the later years of the, again, M40s, I believe that does relate to being 39,000, it was engulfed by a warp storm that was summoned by the a great unclean one named Alcair.
Was it just like a byproduct, or did he intentionally summon it to swallow that up?
Yeah, no, well, so the warp storm, so the great unclean one popped up, and then by being a great unclean one, so essentially like basically being a step down from Nurgle himself, summoned this warp storm to begin engulfing the subsector and the planet, kind of beginning to surround it, you know, making it all a bad time. And so despite the best efforts of the current at the time chapter master Mariah and the current chief librarian, they were able to succeed in sealing Alcair into the planet. However, because of the warp storms and their severity, Aurelia itself was entirely consumed by the warp. And despite that, there was the whole subsector, which they would use for recruiting later. The chapter became a fleet-based chapter as a result. Thus, not entirely dissimilar to the lore of our own chapter, the Bronze Owls.
Yeah, totally.
And then there's one other kind of pre-game significant event of the Blood Ravens, and that was the denotion, or the time of the fifth company becoming known as the Fated, like fated, like with a T.
Fated, yes. Okay.
And though the reasons for this are somewhat obscure, there are some recorded incidents of the fifth company, like potentially having been set by the lure of the chaos of the chaotic powers, of the dark powers. Now, generally, the chapter does not hold to this at all. However, there is technically, it is somewhat in record that the event happened. So today, in current time, the fifth company wear badges of redemption, penitence, and shame upon their armor. But yes, it was.
What do those badges look like?
I don't know that there is this. Maybe there's a specific. I haven't seen specific pictures. Hold on.
Is it just like the Walmart smiley face from the 90s?
Right? I don't know. Yeah, I never saw anything. I'm trying to just double check and look. The only thing that I can kind of see. No, not even that, really. Yeah, there's nothing specifically that I see from that. I think it's probably various things. For example, there was a character who, was believed to have been part of a plot that we'll get to in a minute. But they so like as a form of penitence, they stay silent. So I wonder and they have a white helmet. So I wonder if there's a little bit of portion to that. Though white helmets I generally believe are meant to be the symbol of the lieutenants, or is it lieutenants or sergeants? I think it's sergeants. Because that's often, as is often the case with a lot of chapters, is they'll have it started at the Ultramarines, where an Ultramarine used to make them wear red helmets as a sign that they were going to be censured. But then at the onset of the Horus Heresy, the guy that was going to be censured, he was censured because he thought like, hey, we should maybe have a failsafe if we are betrayed by our brothers. And they're like, how dare you? They would never do such a thing.
J'accuse.
Yeah. And
how dare.
Yeah. So then he was going to be censured, but then they were, oh boy, it turns out betrayed by their brothers. Crazy. And so they realized he was right. And therefore instead made his realm helmet, a badge of honor. So that was the, and so I believe the white helmet is more meant to be part of that position more than like this point of censure. But it is of note that the characters essentially who have either done something wrong secretively or openly and are repenting are the ones that wear the white helmets. So that's kind of why I'm like, maybe there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
So it's tough to say, though. There isn't anything specifically noted about what those symbols and iconography are. But yes, because a big point of it is that it is whispered that the fifth company thing came about because one of the company librarians was seduced by the lure of the ruinous powers. And it was from him that they turned. However, this became the problem was that in M38, the entire fifth company was inherently also recorded as having been lost in the warp, which can happen. Like you just go in the warp and sometimes you don't come back out. Sometimes it's because you're still traveling. Like, so to you, like a week has gone by, but then you come out and it's like 3,000 years later. So it can happen. But that was kind of the main thing. So they don't know why it just was lost in the warp. That's all they know. And then there were these whisperings of the betrayal. So as even just like a safety measure, because the Blood Ravens do hold a lot of reverence to the Emperor because they don't have a gene seed or they don't know what their gene seed is. They hold a lot of reverence to the Emperor himself and have a bit of religiousness to them. It fits between like various levels, not Black Templar level, but like they kind of peek around a little bit sometimes on like I would say the more than other Space Marines, but less than them, the Templars.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let's kind of get into their other characteristics here. So, while they are notionally a codex compliant chapter, they generally do have a small deviation from the being strict, like the strict adherence, because they have their high number of librarians. Otherwise, the actual commanders of the Blood Ravens are known as the Secret Masters, and as befitting their title, there is little to known about who these Marines are and what positions they hold within the command tree.
Great, so they're really good at their jobs.
Yeah,
Okay.
Think the Patriots.
I love.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, however, many of these masters are psychers and are specialists in the studying of the ways of chaos, kind of taking hold from the ways of Vidya, and kind of using this to learn the secrets and better combat those of chaos. And thus, the Blood Ravens generally are better at fighting against heretics.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And many often, honestly, you will find which is not as common outside of them, find chapter librarians leading them into battle.
Oh, cool.
There is, so obviously, as we've kind of alluded, there's been some times where they've clearly had some chaotic influence in their ranks, as it happens to any chapter, truly, right? No chapter is immune, save the Grey Knights. But there are those who do fall to chaos, or maybe are just found as a heretic, one way or the other, are inevitably kept for a time in the Librarium Sanatorium before they are then ritually executed by the Master of Sanctity. Which I wonder if they are meant to be a secret master or not. Not incredibly clear, but
I was going to ask, how is the Master of Sanctity chosen?
My guess is likely a chaplain, and one who is just kind of like the chaplain who heads the tower of the Blood Angels, where like it's just like somebody who is incredibly devout, who is held probably a lot of sway amongst members of the chapter. And so like thus I would imagine then this is similar, where it is probably a chaplain, or maybe just somebody who has gauged a lot of combat, prowess, and a lot of probably goodwill amongst the chapter leaders. Otherwise, in the initiations, those who fail initiation rites, the people fail because they go through they go through some relatively uncharacteristic to most chapter initiations, obviously because of the whole chaos kind of wanting to be essentially very much like witch hunters and counter chaos by studying chaos. They end up kind of being subject to exposure to warp energies, and there are those obviously then who are driven insane or mutated by their exposure to the warp. Those who do fail this and become insane or mutated are led away in warded chains to another chamber simply just called the Tower, so a different tower. Well, I guess this was a librarian. It wasn't necessarily, I guess, labeled as a tower for the sanatorium, but they do go to a tower if they fail this, and they are kept to be studied by the chapter so as to ascertain what went wrong, and then how the knowledge of their failure can be put to better use for the future. So, you know what? While unconventional from a initiation standpoint, they're making good use of it at least. They're learning so that they could do it more. But yeah, so the chapter uses its librarians generally to the fullest extent by having them predict enemy movements, trying to gauge their behavior. And then once they've kind of relayed all the possible occurrences and kind of discern how their strategy is working, the Blood Ravens will strike swiftly and with full force, never varying from the original plan. Keep that in mind.
I was going to ask something about that, but okay, I'll keep it in mind.
The importance of the never varying from the original plan.
Right. Never straight. Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about it.
Yes. Okay, so they got a bit of a rep as a chapter. A lot of memes, one could say, of their, say, kleptomaniacy.
Oh.
If you've seen a Blood Raven meme in any time looking at it, stuff for this game, you know, you will have surely seen that they are essentially labeled as some form of thief taking something. Here are a couple of examples just to like really send it home for you. My favorite definitely being this one of Trazen meeting a Blood Raven and just like, you know, you can't blame a guy for trying. Although,
oh man,
here we go. Here's the full one. You pulling up in the wrong neighborhood. My best part, my favorite, in the one of him like being like, "What the fuck?" Is the other one has already stolen his backpack. So good, love it.
And I'm sure in tradition, a bunch of these memes get stolen and passed around as well.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, obviously. What is a meme but to be stolen? Let's be real.
Hey man, I'm not trying to spout philosophy. I'm just saying.
However, so this comes from something, and somewhat of it is, it's one scenario of the fact that they are a chapter born of game first, lore second. They were not originally meant to be a canonical chapter, right? They were just kind of essentially like, actually it was kind of the point was that they were not meant to be canonical. The developers of, Relic, the developers of Dawn of War were, they essentially were like, okay, well, GW really is like putting a lot of faith in us to create a story of Space Marines and this RTS, right? But they are getting very particular about the utilization of their chapters and how they're represented and all that. So they're just like, screw it. The game always lets you have a mysterious founded chapter, so let's make our own. And we will make our story based on them. But because then this is a video game and they've already told us this isn't canon, let's just add some, like, especially in Dawn of War 2, where, you get weapons, you like find weapons on the ground, like, or in like cases or from enemies, right? Like you can get gear to like equip all of your characters in your squad.
Yeah.
So like they but they were like, well, let's put some in there that are like fun Easter eggs, especially because like in Dawn of War 2 they had like a horde mode where you played as one character and you would like play online and just fight swarms of enemies, right? As different characters. And so they wanted to add obviously more and more of these items. Unfortunately, the Blood Ravens became canon, and thus them having possession of these things became a thing. So that's where the memes come in, because we kind of just have it where by technicality, these are gifted or gifts, right? But people don't like that type of simple answer. So it's a lot more funny if we believe that they just took them as a gift, quote unquote.
Gift. Finger quotes.
Yeah. It's way funnier.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go over some of those gifts, shall we?
Sure.
So they have Rogel's fist, a power mace that is said to have been created by the Imperial Fist, Primarch himself, Rogel Dorn.
Oh.
Why do they have that, not the Imperial Fist? Who knows? They got it though.
Yeah, does Dorn like want that back or like what?
Well, we don't know what happened to Dorn yet, so we'll find that out maybe if he returns or not. You know, my hope is we find out that answer somewhat soon. I'm okay with it being semi-mysterious. I just more want to know what the mystery is at this point, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yes, and then they have the Axe of the Iron Snake, a power axe that once belonged to the Iron Snakes chapter. So that one's just kind of fun, like, hey, this chapter that, you know, wait, did they still exist? That's the part I forgot to write down. Iron Snakes. Are they around? Did they die? Did they make it? Are they around? They're a second founding chapter, but are they still around? Did they like get wiped out somewhere? Were they a dead chapter? It seems like no. It seems that they are still around. It appears. So, okay. They're just kind of in the outskirts at the moment. So, just a fun one. Azrael's second, the Forged of Night Black Metal. This mighty power sword was once said to be a cousin of the Dark Angel's Grand Master Azrael's legendary Sword of Secrets.
Oh.
So they like made a second sword, clearly for Azrael because it's named Azrael's second, but they have it. I don't know. They have the Mephitic Perdition of Flies, which was once a power fist of the loyalist death guard Solon Decius. However, when he was infected with Nurgle's rot during their kind of escape from the rest of the chapter, who was turning into Nurgle and all blah, 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 Decius cut off the hand inside his gauntlet, thus also leaving the gauntlet down, in a futile attempt to halt the disease. This was futile because he did, in fact, die. But they've got this, supposedly just the hand that was once inside it would be the only thing that was corrupted. However, that would not be the case in the past for many other things. So I'm willing to believe that they just have a cursed power fist. You ever wonder why they get corrupted?
Yeah, no kidding.
They have the Cruelty of Jeffros, a Stormbolter that was originally wielded by the Crimson Fist Space Marine Jeffros, who used his Stormbolter to slaughter every underdweller he found in Hive Qualitas. He was essentially got labeled as a heretic for stuff like that. So he's not the guy you want the Stormbolter from.
Gotcha.
He's not a guy you want to be like, yeah, that's his. Isn't that cool? Isn't he labeled a traitor and a heretic and killed a bunch of innocent people? Bye, we got a Stormbolter.
Don't worry about it. We got a cool thing.
They have the Executioner of Heretics. So this one has to be good. A pistol bears the sigils of the Imperial Inquisition and was discovered in the Blood Ravens Fortress Monastery on the planet Cyrene Secundus.
Oh,
and
how'd that get
near
there?
the body of a murdered inquisitor.
Oh, okay.
Nothing. Definitely wasn't a case of like an inquisitor coming around being like, "Hey, that's a cool gun." Be a shame something happened to you.
Be a real shame if.
Oh no, they killed you! I can't believe it! Bang bang! Oh, they're dead now. We couldn't save you. I'm so sorry. Hey, look, you don't have to pull the trigger to make sure somebody dies in 40k. You can just sometimes be a bad bodyguard.
Mm-hmm.
That one's a fun one. The holy armor of Purgation Born, for centuries was worn by a member of the Grey Knights. However, the Blood Ravens claimed this armor from the Grey Knights remains after a Necron assault on Lorne 5.
Wow. Okay.
And so when the wearer is critically wounded, the armor does unleash a blast of psychic energy, damaging and knocking back nearby enemies. This labeling tells me two things. A, they definitely just saw this Grey Knight on the ground and be like, I want that. And, and then second, somebody wore it.
Yeah.
Someone wore this because they figured it out. They had to figure it out somehow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Oh man. All right. Thus, we have gone into the light tale of the Blood Ravens. If there's anybody out there who, is going through the original Dawn of War games and then is going to be like, I'm going to play the second one too. And then if somebody said, I want to play the third one, go out back. There's a guy. Don't worry about any sounds you hear. He's going to tell you to look at the flowers, and we're going to forget you ever thought there was a third one. Anyway.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so this is where the spoilers will begin. So anybody who doesn't want to go to that, you can skip ahead to when we go into a fun breakdown at a section later, though that might have spoilers in it too. So who knows? We'll see what happens when we get there. So we begin to the story we do know about the Blood Ravens. And that was back when we were kind of getting into Dawn of War 1.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, though, actually for the video game Dawn of War 1, we're not going to go into, there will be spoilers, obviously, but it's not like I'm going to go through the plot of these games like detail by detail. It's going to be more about the things that truly affect the chapter. And so honestly, from the first one, the main aspect of this that's important to note is the first game's story is centered around the Alpha Legion are riling up these orcs, inevitably trying to build more and more and more to summon a greater demon of Khorne.
Mm.
And it's kind of within this that the librarian character, the initial librarian character, Isidore Akios, is dramatic ironied to showcase to us that he actually is secretly collects chaos artifacts, right? And then unfortunately then becomes allured by the chaos sorcerer of the Alpha Legion who is dealing with all of this and betrays the Blood Ravens who are there. This is the more important note from this is that both the summoning of the Khorne demon and the betrayal is the implication of the corruption, not only among librarians, but thus the Khorne influence of this greater demon, right? This, because you don't kill the greater demon. So it's out there.
Yeah.
But prior to that aspect coming to a head, the chapter does end up facing one of its most devastating losses in the Karava system following a successful rout of Cronus by David Thule. So David Thule's on Cronus, and he's doing good, cool things. He's saving the planet from a whole whack of stuff. Because obviously these are Dawn of War games, so like the plot involves a lot of factions compared to maybe ones you'd see in like a book where maybe generally you have like 1 to 2. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to have armies you can play. So like Dawn of War 1 had Space Marines, Orcs, Eldar, and Chaos Space Marines, right? the first expansion, Winter Assault, added the Guard. Then the third assault, which was Dark Crusade, which is the one with Cronus, that is the Cronus story, added Necrons and Tau. And then in Soulstorm, in the Karava system campaign, they really pushed it to the tilt and added Dark Eldar, Sisters of Battle. I think that was it. I think it was the two. But yeah, so then you have like pretty much every, especially at the time, playable faction other than Tyranids. And this, they're the only ones that aren't there.
No Tyranids allowed.
Thus, however, unfortunately, Karava would find themselves at a loss. And in that, they lost 5 whole companies of the 10 that a chapter holds. So a full half of the chapter lost. And it should be noted, especially because they start on the same planet and they were the inevitable victors of the whole system, they lost to the Orcs. It was under Commander Gorguts, who, man, just was going to show up later. Just real shame. Real shame. Anyway, that was an aside. Gorguts, though, did win that, which is why specifically the chapter or the commander you play as in Dawn of War Soulstorm is not Davian Thule. Because Davian Thule and friends, after dealing with the Cronus, the planet Cronus, and thus hearing of the reeling loss in the Karava system, returned to the Aurelia subsector to start working on getting new recruits. They gotta replenish. They're at 500 of 1,000 Space Marines now.
Mm-hmm.
However, unfortunately, they find themselves coming back, dealing with a number of orcs getting roused up seemingly by Eldar. However, these Eldar are supposedly warning of some type of horrid fate that's going to come deal with them. But like good Bloodraven Space Marines, they don't listen to this Eldar trickery. Except that it wasn't trickery, but in fact the Tyranids who have come to take over the sector.
Oh, good.
So, and realistically, they may or may not have been diverted there because of the Eldar as well. So it may, to be fair, they may have had some reason, may have unknowingly had reason to be like, you know what, Eldar, screw you, because they kind of fucked them over. Anyway, partly it was actually because there is some belief that the idea was that they would actually have a better, because the Eldar don't want the Tyranids to win anything, right? So part of it is that the belief is that the Eldar would have believed that the Imperium would be able to deal with this better than if the Tyranids came and attacked their craft world, which was Ulthwé. So a rather important one. So that's some thought into that point. However, again, I won't go into we don't need to go over the basis of the campaign, but when it all seems very tough and lost, the chapter is able to hold out long enough in the subsector to be reinforced by Gabriel Angelos, who has kind of come with the full force of the chapter to the area.
Sick.
And thus, after the Tyranids kind of get out, the planet Aurelia decides, watch out, I'm back. You're mad, I'm back.
I'm thinking I'm back.
And thus they investigate it because they're trying to obviously see why the hell it came back, but they also get a distress call, which is crazy because how would this planet that was in the warp have people on it still? Like, it's crazy. Though there are planets in the Eye of Terror, but when it goes in the warp, it's usually thought that everything's screwed over. Right. So they're like, oh, what's going on here? However, when they go to investigate it, slowly but surely becomes clear that chaos has affected a great number of things on this planet, and not just the people, and including the people on it. As the governor that sent the distress signal betrays the Space Marines, and thus they must continue to kind of learn and figure out what the hell is happening here and why the Black Legion are hanging around. One of the things that also happens in the game that's just a fun note, especially because Dawn of War 2 at least now is playable. Like that is a playable game now. Because all the Windows Live stuff got obviously shut off, and it all works now without needed the whole, because that was a games for Windows Live game.
Yeah.
If you remember that train wreck.
Boy, do I.
Yeah. So
I remember the games I couldn't play because of it.
Yeah. Luckily, I never had an issue playing Dawn of War 2, but I heard of plenty of others. GTA 4 was a classic issue.
Batman Arkham Asylum.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so, however, kind of as you play the game, it's one of those where, like, the whole basis of Chaos Rising is like a chaos system where, like, if you do certain actions, you will gain purity or chaotic influence. And and that goes for you and your whole squad, because in Dawn of War and 2 and Chaos Rising, technically all of them, but like specifically those two, because it's supposed to be the same character, you name the commander that you are playing as, that like leads the units. So it's not like in the first one where you play as like Davian Thule or whatever, whomever else. In this scenario, you are whoever you name, and then you have your squad. And so any of your squad mates could also individually fall to chaos through various things in the game. There's a number of things. It can be, honestly, I would say it's a little bit harder to necessarily find it so that you only have one turn to chaos. But there's a weird quirk in this, in that technically the heavy gunner Avitus in story, betrays your squad and attempts to leave, but then is killed by a main character. And then, but then there's supposed to be another traitor still, right? Avitus is like not the only traitor, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And it's like supposed to be a spy, and that ends up being just whoever you had as your highest chaos corrupted, or if none are chaos corrupted, it's Martellus, the Tech Marine. However, this can't be canon because Martellus, the Tech Marine, is one of the people who help redeem the chapter in the next DLC.
Oh, interesting.
So he's the default.
Comes back in a totally different spot.
He's the default guy that becomes the traitor and joins the Black Legion. But he's one of the few characters that comes back. So, actually most of the characters technically come back. So it's a weird thing. Essentially, it's best just to be known from a canon standpoint. Avitus is the only truly canonical betrayer. Some could say, though, because you don't play as the same character, that maybe your character is the one that canonically became the traitor. And I'm willing to live with that.
That's interesting, yeah.
I'm willing to live with that. But yeah, so somebody becomes a traitor, but you're trying to figure out the whole time, like, who is this? Who's the spy? And one of the biggest clues comes in when the space Hulk called the Judgment of Carrion comes out of the warp as well. So the game squadron of the Blood Ravens board the ship and inevitably find the remnants of the 5th company that disappeared long ago.
Yes.
And the logs of Apothecary Gallon. And it's within it you do begin to very much discover, yes, the rumors were unfortunately true, the Fifth Company did fall to chaos.
Okay.
However, it's within this that you get orders from a good old right hand man of the current chapter master, Apollo Diomedes. And he comes in and he's like, all right, we're pulling out. It has been stated by our chapter master, Azariah Kairos, which is the current Blood Ravens, at this time, the Blood Ravens chapter master and chief librarian. However, one of the things you also discover from these logs is that there are references. And now, mind you, this was nearly 2,000 years ago. But there are references to them being corrupted by the librarian that sealed Alcair in the planet in the first place. That by sealing Alcair, that librarian found corruption in himself. And that began to spread. And that librarian's name was Azariah Kairos.
But that's the name of that we heard another thing.
Yeah, weird, right? And so it became really fishy all of a sudden. Then when Diomedes is like, hey, you know our entire plan for taking over this planet and defeating the Black Legion? We're going to change it up. What did we say earlier?
Wait. But we don't. But the thing about the Blood Ravens is that they don't change up their plan.
That's correct. And
I remembered.
Yes, and thus Gabriel Angelos, and technically, especially if you are the good aligned character, which is why I say maybe technically your character wouldn't be the canon one, but either way, I think they actually reference that he gets censured, so maybe that is why he's not there in Retribution. But yeah, they're like, all of a sudden, they're like, actually, Apollo, why don't you Diomedes nuts and go fuck off?
Got him.
Yeah, and just like go fuck yourself.
Say it's got him.
And so through this, they not only discover that Azariah Kairos is in fact the same Azariah Kairos, and thus they then thwart the plans of Azariah Kairos and reseal Alcair into the planet. Despite that, Kairos wanted to re-free Alcair, but they do reseal him. But because he's mad that he didn't get what he wanted, Kairos labels Angelos and the Good Marines as traitors, and thus thus must be hunted down. So they are declared traitor by a traitor.
Great.
Thus comes to a head into Retribution, which I will note also comes with one of the greatest Warhammer campaigns to ever play. I'm not memeing at all, which is because much like the previous, Soulstorm and Dark Crusade, you can choose who you want to be there are multiple campaigns based on the different races. So you can play as Chaos, Eldar, Imperial Guard, Orcs, Space Marines, and Tyranids. The absolute best campaign is the Orcs. As you play as Freebooter Captain Bloodflag.
Sick name.
Yep. And throughout the game you are dealt with, everybody deals with Inquisitor Adrastia, who has come to the system hearing of this betrayal and corruption, and is like, nah. She's Ordo Malleus. She's like, nah, I ain't taking any of this. I'll label the whole fucking chapter traitors if I need to, and we'll blow this whole shit up. Right?
Great.
So, I know. However, the orc campaign, I just want to note before we get into the Blood Ravens, is really fun because first she tries to make a deal with Captain Bloodflag, and she's like, I'll give you a good fight if you do this thing for me. And he's like, throw in that hat of yours and you've got a deal. Because he just like looks at her like when they're talking.
Hat?
Yeah, he like looks at her because she's got this like pilgrim like hat.
Okay.
And there's a point where he's looking at it and she's just like, he just like turns around and is like, I like your hat, by the way. So good. It's so good. Anyway, yeah, so then he ends up you end up fighting her, taking her hat, and then going into the Judgment of Carrion and taking it as his new cruiser and leaves the subsector. Which honestly, I want to believe happens coincidentally with, I want to believe that the plot of the Orcs campaign happens in conjunction with the Space Marines.
Yeah.
You know, regardless though, regardless, the Space Marines themselves, so Paulo Diomedes, seeks to see redemption of the chapter, from the influence with it, right? So at this point, Diomedes is aware that, like, you know, this is, shit has gone wrong. Kairos, he was not aware that Kairos was bad. And is like, oh shit. So he thus brings forward the player character along with a couple of the other characters, one of which being Tarkus, who secretly is known as the Ancient, which is a soldier that is like your general like Space Marine soldier guy, but he's taken a vow of silence because he believes he is quoted to have slain a fellow battle brother who served with him on Cronus. However, this is believed to be Avitus, because it's the only one that technically is like confirmed to have died as a part of the squad from the betrayal, like Chaos Rising DLC. But so they go through and they are, you know, you're fighting kind of two wars now. You know, the Ravens are fighting two wars. They're fighting the Black Legion and their own. The soldiers essentially corrupted by Kairos. And they're coming into this just like, you know, as if they are just these full traitors. So they also inevitably what they do is they find, and because Gabriel Angelos gets fucked up because at some point there is one planet, I believe it was Typhon. So Typhon gets destroyed, which was the original primary recruiting world that was left, and then also the first one that got invaded by Space Marines. Or not Space Marines. Tyranids.
Tyranids, yep.
But this was all a bit ruse because the person who wanted this exterminatus was that of Kairos himself. Because he wanted this to create enough sacrifices to help make him alluring to that to become a demon prince himself of Khorne. Because nothing makes more sense than the librarian that was corrupted by Nurgle to wish to be a greater demon of Khorne, who historically does not like psychers. But
don't worry
I
about
have realized that the reason that they used this is likely because he could have easily had gained influence or seen the effects of a greater demon of Khorne from the first game, bringing it back.
Okay.
So what seems like a really confusing thing to me is actually what I believe to be the chaos corruption from the original game kind of trickling its way through while he was originally
Making its way
corrupted by Khorne, seeing the effect, or by Nurgle, he's seeing the effectiveness of this, and thus looks at it and says, well, Nurgle's follower was sealed away, so my only option is Khorne. Why? Because I've seen how you can get the power. I watched it happen many years ago from the first campaign.
Okay.
So that's my thought, is that by watching that, he had decided, oh, well, Nurgle isn't going to work, but Khorne can. And as long as I do this. And to be fair, granted, if you were going to be going for Khorne, this speech, probably a good way to get him. Faithful, enlightened, ambitious brethren. In but a single decade, a few mere swipes of the pendulum, we have gathered a sacrifice to Khorne that will be made legend. Thought it was simpler. Weaker voice that illuminated me during my centuries upon the judgment of Carrion. It was Khorne's messenger who showed me the true path of freedom from our pathetic corpse emperor. And what is this path? This meaning? This purpose to which we gather the skulls of our foes? It is nothing. There is no meaning, no purpose. We murder. We kill. It is mindless savagery. This universe is mindless. In mere hours, billions will die. Innocent, guilty, strong and weak, honest and deceitful, all of them. They will scream, they will burn, and for no purpose but that the mighty Khorne may revel in their bloodshed. And united in this void of purpose, fear or duty, we shall at long last be free. Blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne, let the galaxy burn.
I know that part. Oh my god, all this time, literally like over a decade of having heard that phrase. I finally know where it's from.
I mean, it's from everything. I mean, anything world eaters after post-corruption, they'll say that shit.
Mm-hmm.
But he begins, thus because of the sacrifices on Typhon, he begins his ritual to become the greater demon. However, in doing battle with that of Gabriel Angelos, and then the squad that you play as, the chapter finds itself victorious. They defeat Kyrus, and they then defeat Kyrus and redeem the chapter. Gabriel Angelos gets a number of grave wounds, but does survive them, is kind of reconstructed, and then he is then named the new Blood Ravens chapter master, which he remains to this day.
Nice promotion.
Yes.
Sick.
I believe Jonah Orion, who is the librarian you get to see and I believe play with in that one, he becomes the new chapter librarian or chief librarian, because without Kyrus, both slots were left vacant. So
yeah.
Jonah Orion takes the place. And thus we have...
And it's a happy ending.
Yep. Nothing.
And everyone
crazy.
lived happily ever after.
Okay, realistically, I will note, realistically, and like I mentioned that like the whole basis of this whole spoiler log thing is going to be the fact that like I really was going to go over the things that really affected the chapter, which is mainly Chaos Rising and Retribution.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing that happens in Dawn of War 3 that affects the chapter to a great extent. It's just that they go on, they go in the campaign, you do the campaign, people win, and it's a great time for everyone.
Great.
Essentially. Like,
awesome.
Nothing significant happens enough to the chapter to warrant like anything crazy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it's like, it's a great it's a story, but it's not like one where it's like the chapter gained this or the chapter lost this. Just it happened. They did it. They do, however, I guess here I can momentarily say like this is where the spoiler free zone will end. So wherever I am in the time code here, that's where we'll be. Anyway, this is where people have skipped to.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, in the Dark Imperium of the 41st/2nd millennium, you know, the Blood Ravens do take part in portions of the Indominus Crusade. The Blood Ravens themselves are their whole push after everything that happened was that they were going to, not after being rebuilt, you know, strike out the galaxy kind of on essentially a new slate almost, you know?
Yeah.
So the Blood Ravens do at some point join the Indominus Crusade. They are welcomed back to the Imperium at the behalf of Rabute Gilliman. Which it's funny because like they were out there, the whole Cicatrix Maledictum happens, they kind of come back and they're like, oh shit, Rabute, you're back, that's crazy. And he's like, well, he's like, welcome back, guys. And like, oh shit, you're alive.
Guys, how you doing?
What? Oh my god, you're alive.
Hold up, grab a beer.
Does that mean you're still using that sword then, huh? You're not gonna need to put that down for a minute.
The what? The who?
Rabute Gilliman, if you remember, wields the Emperor's sword.
No, I know, but that's what they're saying. It's like the who? Huh? I don't know what you're talking about.
So what's funny is, despite that they get new gene seed to go through and become Primaris Marines, they didn't seem to get anything of their true origin. So they clearly they got gene seed from the Marines themselves to then begin the process of making more. But it's weird because they hope to glean information about it, but essentially they were like, well, we won't tell you anything until we have something to report, and they have not had anything to report. So here we are.
So here we are. It's a mystery.
Yes, still remains. There's another subchapter we'll talk about later that has a similar issue, but it's when they're getting into Primaris, it's for very different reasons. But they do they still continue to do a lot of research. They utilize great amounts of knowledge through their apothecaries and librarians, and continue to seek out further and find more knowledge of their origins. And the last essentially note is they are thought to have last been seen in the Bastion Theta section or segmentum, and deal with its orc infestation. Because, of course, they believe there are endangered relics. Because why else would they go?
Mm-hmm.
But that is about it. That is where they lie to now. I will note, technically, Gabriel Angelos had a figure. It's Forge World. I don't believe it is purchasable anymore. But he had a mini.
Yeah,
it was in that annoying era, though, where they made really giant bases for minis. For
That's
like diorama minis.
Base, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, so they would, a lot of times these would come with two. They would have a, they'd have a here's a diorama base, and then they'd have like a game base. But they'd obviously advertise the diorama base, so not my favorite. What I find interesting about his mini too, though, is the armor. It's very much kind of like that that early Terminator armor from like the Horus Heresy,
Yeah,
where it
I get
was
what you
like
mean.
very, very plated,
Mm-hmm.
which I like that Terminator armor. It's one of my favorites actually. So I don't mind that. But yeah, so at this point, the Blood Ravens have come to strength and are searching the galaxy for them their secrets.
Hey, good for them. You know, glad to hear that they're in a good place.
Absolutely. And that's about it. I mean, they obviously don't really have anything game wise, like tabletop wise. They're just they're a paint scheme.
Yeah.
So I mean, anything I guess you're curious about with the Blood Ravens or their aspects in Dawn of War, or
I mean, there's a general curiosity that just comes from the fact that there's. I guess it's like a meta curiosity. It's a curiosity of how much more will Games Workshop decide to give them in the future?
that's a great question. I mean, my hope is with what will come from the amazing sales of the Dawn of War Enhanced Edition, that we could get
Babe Ruth pointing at the stands.
Yeah. That we could get that, like, because I feel like especially with the Total War series, I mean, it's essentially been confirmed that Total War Warhammer 40k is happening, right? My hope is
it's real.
Basically.
Continue.
So my hope is that maybe what they could do is they could, instead of making it like Ultramarines, because here's the tricky part. So Total War is intentionally supposed to be a non-canonical game, because the idea is that you're much like Total War or like Civilization, right? If you haven't played a Total War game, like the standard historical Total Wars, I mean, even technically including Warhammer, it's that they're using, much like Civilization, they're using characters and prominent figures from wars in various points in time, right? So in some scenarios, you may be in scenarios where like these people would never have fought each other. They were not alive at the same time. But in Total War, they are. So fight them. So, and like, some part of me would have the thought that maybe they could do Blood Ravens. But I think my issue is I don't think they could make Total War Warhammer 40k. I mean, I think the only way I would want them to be Blood Ravens in that is if it was canonical, right? But my guess is it's not. I think they're going to stick to the normal Total War form and use different characters that are both alive and dead in current lore, right? Because like Total War Warhammer, like 1 through 3, are similar in that, right? Like a good example is you can play as one of the first kings of the vampire counts, and then also play as the son who killed him. So like, and like you can play like, and you can fight against current Imperial Emperor or the Empire's Emperor Karl Franz, who is definitely not alive at the same time that first vampire count king was alive. They were not alive at the same time ever. So that's a whole thing. So that's why it's like, okay, or I can't remember if vampire counts or courts. I forget their name as a faction, but still, like, that's kind of the way that those work. So I too hope that there maybe will be more. There'll be something. I like the mystery of their gene seed remaining there. It's just more. I wouldn't mind some like fun, like more pokes at the, like more hints, you know?
Sure.
But otherwise, like maybe you know, like maybe just something that was like, I mean, I would just like to see them otherwise just get more development.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just see them do something cool. Like, man, oh man, it'd be great if there was like I would love it. Obviously, Space Marine is a game centers around Titus, but like I'd love a game like Space Marine with the Blood Ravens, because and then having like the librarian be a class, or like a game like Space Marine, or like that plays kind of like Space Marine, but like you are a librarian of the blood. I mean, I guess it could be of anything really, but of the Blood Ravens would make a bunch of sense. It'd be sick. But yeah, I mean, like Total War has shown that people are into strategy games, things like RTSs. So, who's to say? Who's to say we can't get Dawn of War 4? Or I mean 3. Inquisitor points gun at head.
Mm-hmm. There wasn't there a 3 here before? I could swear I put it right here. There was a 3. I saw it. There was a Dawn of War 3.
You didn't see anything.
You know what? I think the Blood Ravens stole it. Call me crazy. I think they stole it.
I think it was because, you know what? I think it's knowledge they want to keep guarded. They don't want the masses to know. They will guard it well. All right. Well, anything else about, I guess, the Blood Ravens and their history?
Nah, man, I think they're cool.
Yeah. Hey, they show up at the end of Space Marine 1. They help out at the end. When you take the bridge, you're fighting with Blood Ravens. When that game came out, like the first time when I played that, I was so hyped.
Yeah.
I was like mad. I was like mad that it was an Ultramarines game. Not because it was Ultramarines. That was actually had nothing to do with it. It's actually, to me, it was funny. So at the time, my mindset for Warhammer was actually that the Blood Ravens I thought the Blood Ravens were the Ultramarines of the game. And like the lore.
Interesting. Okay.
I thought those were like the poster boys. To me, the Blood Ravens were the poster boys of the game. And they were a red Space Marine like group. And I loved that. Because red's my favorite color. So I'm like, hell yeah, red. Yeah. So when it was like an Ultramarines, I was like, it's because I looked through the army painter, so I had seen the chapters that exist, and it's so funny to think of this now because I remember the ones I made fun of the most were the Ultramarines, which was partly influenced by my cousin who had originally shown me the game because he was like kind of like Ultra Smurf for her, but that's actually just because he actually knew the lore and shit by that point.
Yeah.
And the other one I was like, yo, Imperial Fists, that's stupid. What a dumb name. And their icon is just a fist. That's dumb. And now here we are. Imperial Fists are probably legitimately one of my favorite chapters. It's amazing how these things go.
Yeah, funny how that shakes out.
Yeah. But yeah, so I was so disappointed, and then seeing the Blood Ravens at the end of Space Marine 1, I'm like, fuck yeah. But yeah, I think if you got anything else, cool. I think that'll do it for this week.
Yeah.
All right, look at us. Ending about on time. Crazy. Anyway, we'll see you guys next week.
Goodbye.